we go. Now we've got audio. Doing a little bit of testing here on my screen. All right, there we go. Hello, everyone. It's Alex once again with Code Black and me. And so, first, I want to thank everyone for their support of Code Black. Like, comment, share, subscribe to Code Black. Check out the Facebook. Check out the Slack community. We need to see more Slack chatting over here. I usually, whenever I do make videos, it's been a while since I've made a video actually. Whenever I make videos, I go ahead and I put them over here in the Slack chat as well. So check out new videos. I try to put them in the general, and there's obviously a capstone Code Black one over here too. So for the the pilot training that we do. So tonight I decided that I was going to go ahead. Oh, like, comment, share, subscribe to my channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe to. I have another channel for cooking, so shameless plug. That's Squiller's Delight. And then also communicate on the Facebook page for Code Black. Doing great things. If you ever need any assistance, hit me up on Slack. Dave usually will send me a message if anybody needs assistance, and I'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. So, on that note, what we're going to do tonight is we are going to look at a program called LinqPad. Now, I've done a couple of different LinqPad videos before, but I wanted to kind of go over how you can use it just to learn SQL. I had a conversation with a newer member of Code Black here earlier this week, and I wanted to kind of show her. Hopefully, she's watching in here as well. I want to kind of show her. I don't want to turn that up too much there, blow my eardrums out. I want to kind of show her how you can use LinqPad, which is a very simple client for SQL, to learn the syntax of SQL. Now, MySQL and Microsoft SQL SQL are slightly different. There's a few keyword differences, but the general format of SQL is going to be the same no matter where you go. Okay. And if in doubt, if you ever get stuck on the differences between the two, if you go here and you go to w3schools.com, wonderful resource on learning SQL and other things, tech and code related. If you go here, it's going to take a while to pop up here for some odd reason. Come on. Oh, that's why. W3 Schools. If you go here and you look up references, and all of these references are here for different languages. So yeah, there's a MySQL reference and there's a SQL reference. But what they usually try to do is they usually try to keep they split off the syntax so that you can see the differences between the two. So like, for example, if I go into this insert into right here, you can see that there's an insert into example here. There's where statement clauses in here as well. And so it's a great cheat sheet online for you if you want to learn how to do that. But let me go over to, and somebody just, uh-oh, Mike McGee commented. No, sir. No entity framework. Negative. We don't talk about EF. That is the bad word of the day. of the century. No, no EF. Little code joke there, y'all. So, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go here to Google, and I want you. And I've talked about LinqPad before, but I'll keep talking about it till I'm blue in the face. LinqPad is a really great tool for you to learn different syntaxes of server side code as well as SQL. And so it's built upon what we call the .NET framework. And what the .NET framework is it is Microsoft's robust library of code that allows you to interact with different systems and stuff like that, kind of in a nutshell. Okay. It also, as you can see here, you can query databases in Link, which is language. Oh shoot, Link, 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 LINQ, Link. It is language integrated query. And so what language integrated query is I can query a SQL table using C sharp or any other language that allows you to use Link. I usually use C sharp. You can do it in VB, but it's really painful. It is free. There's two versions. There's multiple versions. There's a free version. There's a professional paid version, and there's like an enterprise version for like big companies and stuff. It's fairly cheap as well. And so, if you get the paid version, then you can get the IntelliSense, what we call the IntelliSense support. And what that is that when you start typing, little hints pop up for you. If you don't pay for it, then you don't get the IntelliSense, which is a little bit harder. But if you're using it to learn SQL, you won't really need IntelliSense unless you're using table stuff, right? But what you do is you come over here, and there's some examples here of using Link, and then you can just use regular SQL as well. You come over here, you download what you need, and when you come over to this page, you'll see that there's a 64-bit, a 32-bit, and an ARM 64-bit download as well. You cannot use this on well, you can use this on any system that allows you to run .NET Core, which are Linux-based systems. I've never tried to run it on a Linux-based system, so you know. The other thing too is there are older versions out here, but you want to do the LinqPad 7 version because that's the most up to date on the .NET framework of 5 and 6 that's out there now. So just to keep yourself kind of up to date, you want to download the most recent version here. It's very lightweight. It doesn't take a rocket scientist, and it doesn't take a lot of horsepower on your computer to run. So this is an excellent tool. I use this at work all the time. I was just using it today. So I've already downloaded it. So you want to when you download it, you just want to go ahead and download it and do all the default stuff on there, right? And I'm going to go ahead and launch it. And it has this nice little splash screen that pops up. And let's just kind of go through some of the little features here. So if you're running a licensed version, you'll see up here that it's licensed to me. Up in this left-hand corner is where your databases and your server interactions would be. So in here, you see that there's a demo database, which is an actual physical database that will download when you download and installs on your machine when you download and you install LinqPad. Under this database, you can see that there's some tables under here. And I believe this is either I think this is a copy of the Northwinds database, which is a Microsoft sample database that's out there. And so that's what you see here. Now you can act if you have a SQL Server, like an Azure cloud-based SQL Server, or a MySQL Server, or Amazon Web Services server, or even a Microsoft SQL server, you can attach to that instance of your server via LinqPad by just clicking the Add Connection, and then you would just click the link to SQL. Hey, look at there. There's Entity Framework, Mike. The link to SQL. Mike's going to use the Entity Framework. The link to SQL driver. You click Next, and then if you have an instance of SQL that you can just get into, like I have a local instance of SQL Server running on this laptop right now. What you can do is you can just say test, and it'll pop up connection successful. And then to test that, you can also see if you can get to an existing database. So if I click specify new or existing, and I click this little down arrow, I've got these databases here that I've got access to, which really aren't, real databases, but well, they're real databases, but they're system generated databases, so you don't want to mess with those. So you can create a new database this way as well. So you can do it. You can do this as well if you have a server that you can attach to. But as of right now, just fresh out of the box, we're gonna use the demo sample database that we have here under our query structure. That's first. Second, in this lower window over here to the left, you'll see a samples tab and you'll see a my queries tab here. Now the my queries tab are queries that you create that you can save as .link queries that you can open up and you can refer to. So if I open this up, this is a simple little LinqPad query that I had in C#, right? So if I ran this, it'll just run there, right? It'll just run that. Okay. I'll close that query. But the one I want you to focus on if you're learning SQL is this nice little samples tab over here, and it gives you everything that you need to know about how LinqPad works and some of the C# and F# stuff there. So if you open up this LinqPad tutorial, it gives you where to start, what to do, and it shows you what you can do here. Let me make this a little bit bigger or smaller there. And it says if you're using LinqPad for querying databases, skip ahead to this query. If you're new to LinqPad, start with the 5-minute introduction. They misspelled introduction, and so, or they call it induction. So if you come down here and you open this up, it says hello LinqPad. Here it is, the simplest hello world ever. Just hit F5. If I hit F5 here, it'll run this, and I get a hello world that pops up. It's just a C# text there, right? Dump of C#. Now, if I wanted to query a database, and I'll just kind of skip down here, and now this is saying that it needs some NuGet packages for LinqPad. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I think I clicked it more than once. So what it's doing right now is it is going out to Microsoft's NuGet package library and downloading the files that I need, so I don't have to go do those all by myself. It knows what it needs, and it'll just go grab what you need, and it'll do it that way. So if I run this, I should get some data down here, and I do. So we've actually run a query using C# like SQL. Again, this is not what we're going to use it for if you're learning SQL. I'm just kind of showing you this here. Okay. So let me close this query. Close query. You can just hit this X over here as well. Now I'm going to come down here where it says database querying features, and it talks about how you add a connection, how you select a connection, and so on and so forth. So I would encourage you to look at this over here and follow it kind of step by step. But what we're going to do, oh, look at there. There's an Entity Framework SQL database. I'm going to right click and just delete that connection. I don't want I don't want Mike to get all triggered over there. Okay, close all. Close that query. Now, if you're using this for SQL, the easiest query to run, if you think of SQL, you think of CRUD operations, CRUD, right? Oh, let me go back. Let me go back for a second here. Okay, so I covered these two windows over here. This big window over here is your main query window. And this is where you're going to write your code. And in this window, in this drop down, you'll see a difference, a bunch of different languages that you can use. You can use SQL, you can use eSQL. I've never used eSQL. Visual Basic, C Sharp, F Sharp, and of course the sequels. Um, Over here on the left, this little play button is when you hit F5, this executes your SQL or your code. If you're able to debug, which is more for the paid version, you can use these here. What these are is these are breaks and exceptions for your code, which will stop your code from running. This just kind of displays the output differently on the screen. This gives it in text, and this gives it in a grid. I already talked about your language dropdown, your .NET framework. So if you have multiple frameworks, you can test that this way. Now, let me say this. .NET framework, they're getting away from the older versions of the .NET framework. So on this particular one, a version of LinqPad, you can only use 3.1, the .NET Core, and the new .NET frameworks that are out there recently. If you want to use an older framework, you got to download an older version of LinqPad. The connection is your data connection for your database. So you have to have your database that you're going to use in this connection field here. And that tells LinqPad, this is where I'm going to query my data from. Okay. So, and then there's a menu up here that are just kind of menu selections here. We won't go over that too much into this one yet. Excuse me. So let's query some data. So, oh, the other thing too that I wanted to kind of show you is when you change this little drop down, I'm going to change this to SQL. It will change your editor. So you can see that my editor changed, my query editor window changed. So I can't debug anymore. I can only execute. Also with that, you can, your language has changed as well. So in C Sharp, a double slash there is a comment line. That's not a comment line in SQL. A comment line in SQL is either this or this. This is a multi-line comment. Okay. So here's what I want you to do first. Get used to using comments. Don't over comment your code. But if you get lost, what you can do is you can use your comments as a guide for your logic of what you need to do. So one of the things that we'll do real quick is let's just take this multi-line comment, and all the multi-line comment is a forward slash, asterisk, an asterisk, and a forward slash. Okay. So we're going to query data from the demo DB. But first, before we get too far down the road, I mentioned something earlier called CRUD. C-R-U-D. CRUD. Okay. You're going to hear a lot of acronyms. CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. Any database that you use is going to have some kind of CRUD operation on it. Most databases, I should say. I'm not going to say any, because there are different kinds out there. But for relational database systems like SQL Server and MySQL and others, and Oracle, you're going to use CRUD operations, okay? You're going to create data. You're going to create data in databases. You can create tables. You can read tables. You can read data from tables. You can update table data. You can delete data in a table, CRUD. Okay. So in this, what we're going to do is a really quick uh, C for the CRUD. So we're going to do the C first. And what create is that is when you're putting data into the table, some way, shape, or form, or you're creating tables, or you're creating somewhere for your data to be stored. You're creating stored procedures. Anytime you're creating something new in the database for SQL, you're going to do an insert, okay, or you're going to do a create, okay. Now, insert is going to insert data into an already existing entity, a database, but usually tables, okay? Usually tables, usually inserts for tables. Create is going to give you the ability to create databases or create tables or create a stored procedure or create new columns in a columns in a table. Okay, so let's do a really quick CRUD operation. Okay, we see over here that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tables. What happens if we want to create a new table? So one way to create a new table is just to say create table, and you want to give it a name. Now, you're not going to use these ticks. I'm just kind of giving you the syntax of that. Okay. And inside, you're going to have your columns here. Column 1, column 2, and so on. Okay. Now, this is the syntax of what a create table looks like. So let's actually create a real table here. I'm going to type create table. Now, let me step back for a second. If you're using an IDE like SQL Server Management Studio, which is a wonderful, wonderful tool to use, or any other or any other IDE or interactive desktop environment, development environment, then you have GUI things that you can do. You can right click in here. You can say new table, that kind of stuff. You can't really do that in here. So get used to typing out SQL. It makes you much, much better at SQL. Okay. So we're going to give our table a name. So over here, our tables are categories, customers, employees, order details, new orders, product, shippers, supplies, and yes, come on, child. Yes, ma'am. Oh, it's time to start getting ready to go night night, baby. It's 9 o'clock. It's time to start getting ready to go to bed. Put your glasses up there, sweetheart. So um, you have to create a table that makes sense of what your data is going to do. Okay, so let's see here. We have shippers, we have suppliers, products, orders, order details new, customers, categories. Mm, let's call something. Well, let's see, suppliers. Um, that might be vendors. Um, let's call. Let's create a new table called purchase orders, or yeah, purchase orders, POs, and we'll follow the syntax that we have here. So when you're creating a table, table structure is columns at the top that go down and rows that go horizontal. Okay. Column names dictate what kind of column names dictate the name of your column all the way down. The type of data that you stick in that column dictates what's going to be in those rows across. Okay. So we have orders here. So let's create something called purchase orders, a table called purchase orders. And then what we can do is we can say, okay, we're going to have a purchase order ID. Let's call it PO ID. And try not to put spaces or empty white space like this in there. You want to have something like that, like an underscore or no space, something like that. Okay. Now, that's the name of our column. Okay, so if you think of an Excel spreadsheet, right? If you open up Excel, I'll open up an Excel spreadsheet. And I'll just use this as an example. Okay, think of this worksheet in Excel of being a table. Okay, so at the top, we've got our columns, right? And we're just giving the column a name. So we're just going to be purchase order ID. And our next column is going to have something else in it, right? Let's say purchase order ID. Let's see, purchase order date or PO date. Let's see, PO customer, something like that, right? Or let's just put customer ID, something like that. Okay. And then let's say, yeah, let's leave it real simple. Okay. Now earlier I mentioned that when you're creating a table, you have to give the table a data type. A great way to look at this, I'm sure this is out there for MySQL. If you look on Google and you type up purchase and you type up SQL data types like this, and you can look here in Microsoft, and this is for T-SQL. No, let me actually use something like this. I have a cheat sheet at work for this kind of stuff, but list SQL data type list. There we go. So this will give you a list of the data types in SQL. Okay. You have chars, and it tells you exactly what chars have here. So chars can be a string. It's a fixed length. It can be 0 to 255 bytes long. Okay. Now, again, the size parameter specifies the length of the column in characters, 0 to 255. Varchar can be a variable length string, so it can be this size or this size or this size or this size. Okay. Binaries are equal to char, but they're just for binary byte strings, so actually byte data. A var binary is similar to varchar. It has different lengths. And then there's some other ones in here that I won't get into this evening. But numeric data types, bits, booleans, ints, integers, big ints. You want to make sure that when you're creating a table, when you're creating a column, that you know the data that you're putting in there. Because if you make a column, like an integer, for example, right? Or an int. If I make it an int column, I can only have a number. Excuse me, I can only have a number that's this big here and this small. Okay. I can't stick something this size into this smaller number column. If you try to do that, you'll get an exception. Okay. Or you get an error in SQL. So you have to know what you're kind of putting in there. Okay. Dates are the same way. And then these are the SQL Server ones down here. Let's see, this must be MySQL. This is MySQL here. And these are the SQL Server data types here. Okay. So kind of keep an eye on this. And actually what you can do is if you in your browser, you just make a, you know, um, make a favorite and put your, you know, put your favorite in a folder. Is what I usually do. Okay. So let's go back to this here, and let me close that window here. And what we're gonna do is we're going to um, give this column a type of column. So an ID is usually uh, your what we call a primary key in a table, in a database, in a table. You want to have something that's unique to that row of data that serves multiple purposes. If you query the table, you don't get duplicate rows back. Also, it allows you to keep your database, your table clean with unique data in it. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this purchase order ID an int, which automatically gives it that size, right? We don't have to give it a size because it's already got a size right here. Okay. And then we're going to say not null. Okay. So what null is, null and not null. Null in programming languages, you have empty, and well, let me explain it this way. Actually, a space, empty space, is actually a field. It's actually a value. Empty space is a value. So if you stick something into a column with an empty space, there's data in there. But what is a column when there's nothing in it? It's null. It has nothing in it. There's no value to it or anything like that. Okay. In SQL, you have to designate if a field can have null or if a field cannot be null. If a field is not null, it means it has to have something in it when you are putting data into the table. Okay. The last thing we're going to do is make this our primary key, and that's that unique identifier that I was talking about. Okay. Now to delimit to put a delimiter on your table to give it to talk about the next column, you just put a comma there, and this one's going to be date, and we're going to say it's going to be not null because we want ones with dates in there, and then customer ID is going to be in varchar. It's going to be 5 bytes long, and it's not null. And the reason why I'm putting that customer ID in there is because that customer ID, eventually I'm going to make a link from this table back to my customers table up here. Okay, so what that means is that the primary key in this table, and you can notice that it's primary key, it's got a little icon next to it, which lets you know that's the primary key. This table, the primary key in this table is going to link to this table. So if I look up the customer ID in this table, I know that it's going to correspond with this table over here. Now, that helps you when you have to pull data from multiple tables into one query. It's what we call joining, and that's kind of a more complex um, piece of SQL that you can do. In any case, we've got a table that we can create. So let's just go ahead and hit F5. And it says runtime error, and it says the specified data type is not valid. Oh, because I'm missing a comma here. Oh, it says it didn't like that. If known date. Date. Oh, hold on here. Let me copy one of these dates over here. Details, dates, where's date time, date time. There we go. Okay, so down here it says query successful. And if I come over here and I refresh my tables, I will now have a purchase orders table over here. You can see it's got my primary key, it's got a date, and it's got my date time, and it's got my customer ID. Okay. Now, once you've created the table and you've run this SQL, you can do one or two things. You can just save this in a file. You can even save this in this LinqPad query, but it's up to you. You can save this query, save as, and I'm just going to call this create table, PO table. So now, if I want to, I can come over and run this query if I need to. Now, if I ran this again right now, I'm going to get an error. I'm just going to go run it and see what happens. I get a runtime error. And the reason why I get a runtime error is because we already have the table over in our database. So once you create a table, you can't recreate the table. You'd have to drop it or delete it and recreate it. Okay? So we did the C right here. So we've created a table. All right, now let's open up a new query. Go to SQL here, pick our demo database here. Now let's do the next part in our CRUD operation. Let's do the read. Reading is just getting data from a database, or I'm getting data from your table in your database, okay? Or reading the structure of a database, or you're gathering data up. The query language in SQL, structured query language, means that you're going to actually write your query to communicate with the database. So let's pull information out of the categories table. Actually, let's pull information from the customers table. To read, you're going to use the select keyword. Okay, that's the select keyword is it's going to be your bread and butter. You're going to use it almost all the time. Okay, depending on what you got going on there. Okay, so your select statement has parts to it, or your query has parts to it. You have a keyword. Okay. Then the next thing you're going to have is what you're pulling. Okay. Now, never mind the pipes here. I'm just kind of showing you this. So when you're pulling data from a table, there's multiple ways to do that as far as the select statement. You can use what we call a wildcard, and that asterisk wildcard pulls, it lets SQL know, give me every column in that table. Okay. Now, obviously, you have to be careful with that because the larger the table, the more data you pull, the slower your SQL database query is going to be. Okay. Or what you can do, because we're pulling from the customers table, you can pull the columns that you need. Okay. So I'm going to pull the company name. I'm going to pull the contact name and the address, city, region, and phone. Okay, so that's the data we need. Next, you have to tell SQL where you're pulling the data from, right? Okay. Let me pull this to the side a little bit here to make room for myself here. Come on, buddy. we go. And you do that, you tell your query where you're pulling the data from by just using the from keyword, from. And you have to tell it the table. It's from customers. Okay. So if I run this, I've got a runtime error because I have a my column's not named the right way. So what I can do is I can, in LinqPad, you can actually pull this column name over here, and it's actually called company space name. So let me do it the right way. I wouldn't have done that, but contact name, see something. Okay. So if I run this, oh goodness. Put the brackets around it here that lets you know that it's a column name. See if that works. There we go. Okay. Yes, my bill's coming. So what I did was I basically pulled every company name, contact name, address, city, region, and phone in this table. But if you look, there's a lot of rows in this table. There's a few rows in this table. Okay. What if I don't want all that data? What if I only want the ones that are in the United States? Okay, like California or wherever. Okay. Okay, so what I can do is I can add to my query. And actually, I'm going to pull country over here to the other side of the phone. And I'll run that. So now we have our country in here, right? What if I only want the ones that are from the United States? Okay, I have no idea how many there are in there, right? So what you can do, and again, you can make this multiple lines like this if it's easier for you. Okay, it's always going to read what you put in there. So then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a filter on my results. How do you put a filter on your results? Well, I'm going to filter my results by saying where, and it's going to have a condition here. Okay. So, for example, I'm going to have all of the company names, contact names, address, cities, regions, countries, phone numbers, but I only want the ones that are from the United States. So to do that, I can say where country is equal to USA. And if I do that, then I get a lot less stuff back here. See? I have 13 rows back that I have for the United States. What if I want to filter it down even more? What if I don't want all of the United States stuff? What if I only want the ones that come from Washington State? Okay. You can build upon your query conditional by using operators, what we call operators here. And so the and the or operator give you it gives you more of a filter on your conditional. So I can say, give me all of that information from the customers table where countries USA and region or state is Washington. So I can say and region equals Washington 5. And now I've got all of the Washington rows back from my table. Okay. What would I do with this information? Well, I can take this information and I can put it into a report if I want to. Okay. But I don't know what the word region is, right? I don't know what that is. In my query up here, I can create what's called an alias. And an alias just gives a different name to this data. So region, obviously, in this instance, is state. I can say as state. And if I run this again, it turns my query to state. Okay. So, and in LinqPad, what you have here is you can look at this and you can see the actual SQL that was run. Obviously, I know what the SQL is because I wrote the SQL. Okay. And I got my results here. So I can export my results to Excel like this. I've never done this part, y'all, so y'all bear with me. I don't know if this is going to work or not. Let's see if it does, because I already have Excel running over here. I think I probably just locked it up. Yeah, it gets kind of iffy. It gets kind of iffy when it does this. I don't know why. Oh, I don't know what's going on with that. Okay, so yeah, it just locked up my stuff here. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, there we go. It took a while, but so it gives me my information in a report right there. And you can see also that this address right here is actually one address. Not too crazy about that. I don't like the way it does that, but I can do it with the formatting as well. So yeah, so you can take that information, run a query, and take that information, run a query, and save that information to an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, or any other kind of report that you're trying to run. You can do this all day with LinqPad. Right, I'm not gonna save this, but you can do this all day with LinqPad. Okay, I can come up here and I can write a much more in-depth, complex query. Um, but most of your reading is going to follow this kind of a filter, right? You can also order your results too, right? Or sort. If I come down here and I can say, let's say I want to sort it by last name. Order by contact name. 5. And you see that the order of my data has changed now. That's key, because if you have a report that you're supposed to create, and in your requirements for the report, they say we want this sorted by a specific field, then that's what you want to make sure of. So like, for example, if I come up here, let's take the region out of there. And instead of sorting it by contact name, let's just take the sort out and just run this. And so we've got all the USA stuff. So now instead of sorting it by contact name, we're going to sort it by region. And you notice that we've got all the A's at the top, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T. The W's are at the bottom. Let's say I wanted to have the W's at the top. I can say DSC for descending. And run that. And now it flips the order. Now my W's are at the top. Okay. So that's a read of our CRUD operations. Let's say we've run this report We give this report to our clientele, and they say, you know what? I'm looking at this report, and Art Braunschweiger's address is not correct. He doesn't have a PO box anymore. He's actually at an actual street address. Okay. That's going to lead us into the next part of our query, which is going to be a simple update. Okay. Updates follow some very similar patterns of our select statement. Okay. The only difference is we want to tell SQL what we're updating first. So updates usually have the following. Um, oh, I gotta put this as SQL though. Updates have the following syntax. You have the update keyword, and you have the table that you're updating. That looks like this. Okay. And then in that update, you have underneath, you have a set. Value. Okay. Don't let that get you too broke up. That's just pseudocode. So it looks like this. So I'm going to update customers. I'm going to say set. And I'm going to come over here and it's going to be address. Helps if I'm connected to the right database. Okay. So address equals, and let's say he gave us the right address. Let's say it's 1212 anywhere court. Okay. Now, if I ran this, it's going to update all of the addresses in my customers table. Don't want that. So anytime you're running an update, you have to give it a where clause or a filter. And you do that with your where clause. So good rule of thumb is if you, let's say I supplied this report, I've got the SQL for this report already. And let's say they say, I want you to change this one right here. He needs to change in the table. Okay, well, already got most of the query here, right? So I can say, give me, I can do this one of two ways. I can put the customer's ID in there and rerun this query. And I can see that this is the customer's ID right here. And I can say where. Like that. And if I do that, it should just update the one row. And it says that query was successful. So if we come back over here and we rerun this query, we can see that his address did indeed change. So that's a where. And just like a select statement, you can filter this down as low as possible, right? Let's say I want to say and address equals the PO box that I had, right? I've already changed it, so or let's say I want the contact name. I know who I'm gonna, and contact name equals changes to 1213. Run that. Rerun this query, and it changes to 1213. Okay. Now, somebody's texting me here. Now, the one thing I will say about this is you want to be careful when you're doing this, obviously, because once you update a table, that's it. It's changed. Come on, it's changed. Okay, go get your vitamins, mama. And so you have to be very careful once you do that, because once you change that data, then that data is already changed, and you can't get it back. So you have to be very careful. There's different ways to make sure that when you change data, that you're not going to alter that data forever and you can't get it and it's not recoverable. Going to get into bed. Going to get into bed. Night night. Turn the light off. Go night night. Okay. So you have to be sure of what you're doing when you're changing data. Okay. So that's the update. So far we've done a create. We've done the read. We've done the update. So let's go to the last one, and that's you guessed it, that's a delete. Okay. Let's say I don't want this purchase orders table anymore. Well, let's say I don't want the purchase order table anymore, right? So there's multiple ways to delete data. When you're deleting a database or deleting a table, you're going to drop it. That helps if I am picking SQL. Okay. Now, like I said before with the update, make sure when you drop a table that you're sure that you want to drop the table. Best rule of thumb is that if you drop a table, that you've backed up the table somewhere just in case. Okay? So there's other ways around that. There's things that you can do to automate some of that stuff. So if I hit F5 here, oh, you know what? I gotta click the database and click there. So now if I come back over here, like we had before, and I refresh these tables over here, purchase orders will go bye-bye. And you see it there. So that's deleting an entire table. Data and all. Data and all. Okay. Let's say instead of dropping the table, come back over here and just recreate that table real quick. So I'll refresh over here, which creates the table anew. Bam. Let's say I only want to get rid of the data that's in the table. Okay, I don't want to get rid of the table. I want to clean out the table. First, you have to have some data in the table. And I did not show this to you intentionally because I want to show you the regular insert statement way. Okay, so there's multiple ways to select data or to put data into a table. You can do the regular insert way. Insert. We come over to purchase orders. Insert into. Orders. And you're going to have your column names here. It's going to be purchase order ID. It's going to be your PO date and customer ID. Okay. Now you're going to put the values in there. And purchase order ID is a numeric value. Since it's a numeric value, you don't use the single ticks there. Okay, I'm just going to put 1. Comma, for the next column. PO date requires a date time. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a date format in there. 6. I'm not going to put a time in there. And the customer ID, let's actually put a real customer ID in here. So we're going to use our Splir customer ID here. Since that's alphanumeric data, which means it's string data, we're going to put text on it. So I click this, it says query successful. Now, if I try to reinsert this row into the table, since purchase order ID is a primary key, I'm going to get an error. And it says a duplicate value cannot be inserted into a unique index. So that keeps me from putting the same thing in my table over and over again. Now, if I come over here and I say 2, that'll work as long as I change it, right? So let's comment this out real quick. And do a select. Everything from our purchase order. So we've got our 2 rows in there. So I said before, there's multiple ways that you can delete data from a table. You can say delete. Okay. Now, if I do that, it's going to delete everything in the table. It'll keep the table, but it'll just delete everything in the table. Okay. Let's actually do that. Let's select this, and I'm just going to run that selected. So now, if I do a select from purchase orders, there's no data in that table. See 0 items. Let me reinsert some rows there. Also, in most, like in SQL Server and in LinqPad, if you just highlight the SQL you want to run and just that and run it, it'll run just that SQL so that you don't have to run everything on there. So if I run this select again, now I've got my 2 rows of data in there, right? Let's say I only want to delete where the row is number 2. So I can put my where on there again. Just copy it. And run that. Oh, it says column name is not valid. It's because I don't have a space in mine. There we go. Run that. Now if I do another select on it, oh, it's because the ID is the same for both rows. Let me put 1 there. And I'll say splurred. Splurred. Sounds like the Swedish chef from the Muppets. Okay. And I put that in there. And if I rerun this delete and then rerun this select, I should have 1 row of data in that table. See that? So that's another way to delete data from a table. A little bit more careful. Okay. Let me insert that row back into the table again. Then select that data. There's another way to delete data from a table and keep the table. Now, again, if you run this one, however, it gets rid of all the data in the table. And that is the truncate table. That will clean out the table. Token error truncate. It doesn't like that. I don't know why it doesn't like that. Weird. I have to take a look at that. Maybe LinqPad doesn't like that. But I do know that, that's in SQL Server, truncating a table is how you can get rid of data a lot faster in a table. So that's the delete. Those are deletes there. Okay. So we've gone over the four CRUD operations, some basic operations, CRUD operations. There's another CRUD operation for creates that I will show you another time that kind of combine create and read in the same in SQL Server, and that's select into. So let's say I have a query that I want, like this query here, right? My select query. So the syntax, and because I don't use it that often, but I'll just do it anyway. Select into. Do it over here. Ooh. Select into. Here we go. So the way that select into works is you could create a query and create a table you can read a data from the table and create a new table all at the same time. Okay. So what I can do is I can create a table doing that, and this is the syntax right here. So let's come over here. Let me bring that down a little bit here. Copy this. Paste this in here. And I'm going to say select these columns from customers. But I'm going to say select those columns into from table where my country is USA and my region is that. Let's see if this actually works. Select. Select into. Select into. Oh. And maybe that might just be an only select star. Yeah, maybe here. Let's just do it this way. I'm going to open, I'm cheating now because I want to show this to you. Because I actually happen to have a copy of the Northwinds DB on this machine. And it's the pubs one here, database, and it's pubs. The query. I'll just copy this right here. I'm going to play with the column names though, because the column names are not right. Customer ID, tables. Oh, that must be Northwinds. This is Northwinds. This is Northwinds. This is I can't remember the other one here. But I can do it over here though. So, okay, so let's just use the employee table. Into employee report table. And we're going to put the employee ID. We're going to put the F name, last name, and we'll put their hire date or job ID and hire date. Into there, from there, and let's just do a really quick select on see what kind of data is in that table. Okay, there we go. Where hire date is greater than 19. Let's just do less than 1988. 1990. 101. Get rid of the order by. From this, there's 11 rows. So now I should be able to refresh over here in my tables. This is SQL Server Management Studio that you're seeing here. So I'm going to refresh these tables. I should have my employee report table here. And now if I select from employee report table, I have my 11 rows, and those are the ones that I have, and they're all employees that were before 1990, January of 1990. So that's an insert into, a select into, where you grab data from one table and put it in another table. Okay. So, sorry I couldn't show that to you here. I don't know why, but yeah, why didn't that? It's gonna bother me. Select that into. Yeah, so if you want to do that kind of stuff, you have to get an actual SQL Server, I guess, and do it that way. Let me do a release search. I bet you can do that in here. So in a nutshell, we've done all four. We've done create. Let me rename this. Save as. We've done read. Get rid of this, though. We've done update. And we've done delete. Get rid of that truncate here. And like that. Okay. So what I'll do is if you have LinqPad, or if you download LinqPad, I can supply these LinqPad queries to you, all four of them, and then you can run these LinqPad queries in LinqPad. You should be able to open these up and run them without any kind of issue, and you can practice. So I wanted to go over that with you today. It's a great tool if you want to share how to do things, or if you want to share how to do other, to learn SQL or whatever. It's a great way to do it. Again, like I said earlier, that if you are going to get into any other kind of development language like C# or VB or anything like that, you can use LinqPad to do that as well. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. So until next time, that's the end of this video. God bless you. Hope this video helps you. If you have any questions, just come over here to the Slack chat and ping me or whatever. And yeah, we'll try and help you out to learn some SQL. Until next time, peace and a hair grease.